Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Castlevania Bloodlines. In the last part, we went through stages 3 and 4, and now we're gonna go finish off the last third of the game, starting off with Versailles Palace in France. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is overall my least favorite stage in the game, just due to the scrolling sections. This is probably a close second. First off, the first screen of the stage has these roses that you can take out on the top of the stage. If you touch their pollen, your controls are reversed in the D-pad. And that's not too annoying, admittedly. Especially because you can just whip the pollen out of existence, even though that doesn't make too much sense. It's more so just a matter of actually getting it moving around. It makes it annoying. Also, hi, Blood Skeletons. We haven't seen you the entire game thus far. They work like they do in the main games. Yeah, you attack them, they crumble for a bit, but then they get back up. Also, in the European version, just because blood was almost always censored, the water never changes color. The skeletons just kind of show up. The blood skeletons are decent for one thing, though, and that's getting some points up, just in case you want to try and get an extra life with some. Though extra lives from points, I think, are relatively hard to get in this game. I think it's every 50,000+. Maybe even 100,000. Not the best odds. Also, in here we have another Castlevania staple. We're gonna see our first Axe Knight. Too bad he wasn't on screen for long. The chandeliers here can crush the enemies, so use that to your advantage if you need to. Also, I did something stupid about 10 minutes ago off camera. For some reason, I had the urge to bite raw garlic. And for the first 15 seconds, I felt like what vampires must feel whenever they get near garlic. But after that, it's not so bad. I can only taste what garlic bread tastes like right now. And you know what? There are worse fates. I don't know why I did it. I just did. And my family looked at me like I was crazy. And honestly, they're in their right to do so at the moment. I hear if I would have roasted it first, it probably would have turned out better. But, yeah, this is my life right now. I feel like Stu Pickles in that meme where he's lost control of his life. Also, a little overkill on the skeleton towers here, guys. Thankfully, whenever it comes to these enemies, you can just crouch and whip or spear, and the top and the bottom two will never be able to hit you, meaning you're completely safe from harm. This is a route change. If you're playing as Eric, you need to go up here. It's just one, well, it's two other rooms. You go up this long with these eye lasers, which are deceptively hard to avoid, might I add. And that eventually leads you into a rooftop segment with a lot of the flame. Actually, that's the only appearance of Fleeman in the game, now that I think about it. They're pretty easy to kill, though, with Eric. One thing I will say about that section, though, is that there's a pillar in the foreground during one bit, and you want to whip behind it because there's a candle that contains either a large point bag, an extra life, or a weapon up. I actually can't recall which it is, but it's something very good. And now we have an elevator sequence of sorts. We need to jump up this rotating staircase. I just like to avoid any enemies here just by mashing the jump button, because that keeps me safe from just about everything. The gargoyle skeletons are going to be the only thing you need to actually attack, because they're the only things that are directly approaching you. I recall when I was a kid, or not when I was a kid, when I was younger, that this was a faster staircase, but no, it's as long as you're just pressing the jump button, you don't have much to worry about in terms of falling off. And there's enough safety platforms that if you jump off to one side too far, you're probably going to land only like a level below you. Mini-boss of this stage is a blue skeleton knight, kind of a follow-up to the mini-bosses from stage 2. This one attacks by punching. It has extraordinarily short range, so if you have good sub-weapons, you don't have much to worry about. After it jumps across the screen, though, it does have a bit of a chain punch, which aims far. So be careful with that. That's the only attack that can be a bit of a gotcha moment. These archers are weird in that they aim for where you were, not where you are. And because of the sub-weapons especially, it's very hard just to take out their arrows without feeling much threat. But there is enough of an onslaught there where on your first playthrough, you might feel a little bit pressured by what's going on. And, yeah, that can kind of suck. another little gotcha moment's coming up here after this next platform. You're going to want to crouch and start attacking because this roller knight's just coming right after you. And if you miss an attack there, you're going to get hit. By the way, even though I didn't get a chance to because my sub-weapon destroyed its ammo, that knight fires a machine gun at you. Alright, now we got one of those face illusions as a mini-boss. We can only attack it when the pillar in the background is the thing that's there. My best advice for this is to walk to the right whenever it starts to attack so that the bullets go in that pattern, because it's a lot easier to dodge the upper bullets than it is the lower ones if you're on the left side of the screen. Either by using your sub-weapons or actually just by using your sub-weapons or physical attacks. You can get rid of them fairly easily, and hopefully you'll just have a better time than I did on my first playthrough. I game over to that mini-boss 2 or 3 times. With that, we are on to the true boss fight of this stage, though, which is a little bit out of nowhere from my knowledge. If I had to recommend a sub-weapon for this boss fight, though, if you can find an axe, bring it in, because it's probably going to be the best for you. Because this boss spends a lot of its time high up on the screen. Because the boss of this stage is Marie Antoinette. She floats around and does nothing. Pile on. Of course, that's not the main form of this boss fight, though. Once we get about 5 points of damage, I think it is, she transforms into the Princess of Moss. It's supposed to be moths. This thing's a giant Mothra reference. It has a powder attack, which does explosions when it reaches the ground. I'm not sure if you can see them all just due to frame rate stuff, but they're there. It'll charge into you, and its third attack is that it'll kind of fly from left to right, back and forth, spawning little moth eggs that hatch very quickly and spawn mini moths that will try to charge into you. You can destroy the eggs before they hatch, though, and even then the baby moths themselves don't take much to kill at all. So just whip forward and you should take care of them relatively quickly. Plus, they don't come back and forth, if I'm recalling correctly. I know they do. Arguably the easiest boss since stage 1. But still, if you're not careful, this could be painful if you don't have a right sub-weapon, or even if you are John, because John has a bit more trouble with this boss fight than Eric, for obvious aiming up reasons. And that's stage 5. The middle part is the worst, just due to the stair sequence leading into the entire hallway before the little vase mini-boss, or pillar mini-boss. Just due to the amount of enemies there are, and there's a couple of gotcha moments there because of it. If you're playing as Eric, his little section he has to go through is tedious. And with that, we're on to the final stage. All the way in England, it's time for the Castle Prosperina. Or no, Proserpina. I've been mispronouncing that castle's name wrong my entire life. Huh. I love this starting screen. I love this music. This stage kicks ass. We don't want to watch out on this stage, though, because to start off, we're going to have Medusa heads firing giant fireballs at you, and it's pretty explosive. My best advice for that is walk forward until one spawns and then duck immediately, because by the time it shoots its shot, it'll already be at an altitude where you can just duck under it. The main gimmick with this stage, though, is illusions. We are now being really mixed up with where we are due to this weird little, not mirror gimmick, but definitely displacement of light. My best advice is to always look for where your feet are, because it's just the best indication of where you are in relation to everything around you. Don't look at where my head is, look where my feet are, that's where I can tell where the next platform is, so on and so forth. This section actually used to be really annoying to me, just because I had trouble with the platform. Once I realized that little foot trick, which is not a sentence I thought I'd say today, you shouldn't have much trouble. Just watch out for the Medusa heads, because following them between the little distortions is very hard, and thankfully there's a lot of cases where you'll get knocked back onto another platform, thank God. This next room is arguably more annoying nowadays to me. Gravity is now reversed, down is now up, even in control. So in order to, say, use my item charge sub-weapon, I need to hold down and then press C. Same with going upstairs. The biggest mess up for me in this is this section here, because for some reason, it is very hard for me to calculate when to jump to dodge these orbs correctly with the screen upside down. I don't know why it is, but it is. And now for a room I don't quite get the purpose of. we have one very, 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 very long passageway. That is all this room is. And there's only one enemy type in it. And we should hear him coming right about now? It's the armor battler from stage 1. We have to destroy about 6 of those, and they come from random directions, and they speed up the farther in we get. For this playthrough, I got a pretty good pattern of right, left, right, right, I think. But these things can just be completely random, and if you're too slow, you're going to be taking a cheap hit. This room is harder as John, though, just because Eric's weapon comes out more quickly. So if you're playing as Eric, you're going to have generally just an easier time there. And with that, we're on to the biggest meat of this stage, boss fights. There are 3, technically 6 boss fights in this stage. And starting off, we got our good old friend, the Grim Reaper, Death himself. However, to start, his fight's a little weird. He's going to summon 6 tarot cards, of which there are 5 varieties. 3 of these are refights against bosses we fought before. The Gear Steamer, the Gargoyle, and the Golem in specific. I'm just going to talk over this because I want to explain the cards, and it's a fairly standard boss rush otherwise. The other cards he has, actually I should note, the Gear Steamers from the Gear card, which I think is supposed to be the Wheel of Fortune, the Golems from the Goblet, and the Gargoyle shows up from one that looks like the Gargoyle. The other 2 cards are the Death card, which he fires a projectile at you, which the best way to dodge is just walk all the way one direction, then walk all the way the other. And then there's the Woman card, which spawns a shitload of meat for you to heal yourself with. I recommend grabbing that card last, but the biggest note is, I may have mentioned before, I wasn't aware of too many differences in boss fights for extreme mode, or expert mode. This is one of the few I am aware of. On expert mode, this card that spawns the meat does not exist. There are 3 death cards instead. So, time yourself correctly. The cards do eventually slow down in reverse direction, so if you're being careful, you can take care of that, no problem. And hopefully you won't take too much damage during the boss refights, because there's no other health restorations beyond death from here on. Also notable is that the refights against these 3 boss fights have less health. It's very noticeable here with the Gargoyle, especially because it only takes 6 hits to take him out, as opposed to like 10 plus during the main run. After we take care of all 6 or 7 cards, we go on to the actual fight against Death. He only has 3 attacks from my memory, one where he goes across the top of the screen firing sickles that home in on you and also explode. A dive attack, which the best way to dodge is just to stand right next to him and jump over immediately, especially if you're playing as Eric. And one where he'll stand at the edge of a screen, suck you in, and throw his scythe out. That attack there is the best opportunity to hit him if you're playing as John, because otherwise it's very unsafe to hit him barring using sub-weapons. Also, I forgot to mention, I've mentioned before that most sub-weapons only take maybe 1 or 2 gems, the item crash takes 3 or 4. Using the super special weapons you get for fully upgrading your weapons with either John or Eric take like 7 plus. They are very jewel inefficient. And now it's time for us to fight Elizaeth Bartley, who immediately transforms into Medusa. Medusa's got 3, technically 4 attacks. She'll do this little wave attack, which the best way to stand is right here. Another fire attack, which stops low. She'll swing her tail at you. Best way to dodge that as Eric is to do the mega jump, as John is just hope you time your jump right. And then she does 4 or 5 little pathetic swings of her fist to try to hit you. After which she loops and you push her back with every single attack from her little charge forwards. This is the fight that's really easy as John here, just because his fully upgraded weapon does more damage, I believe, than Eric's. And now we're on to the tedious boss fight against Bartley's main form. Her attacks in this fight are a little bit unorthodox. She summons an amount of orbs between 4 and 6 depending on where in the fight you are. And then they slowly enclose on each other in the background. If they enclose on each other, their attack comes out. In the meanwhile, though, you need to attack her an amount of times equal to the amount of orbs she summons while she teleports from left to right, summoning just standard fire projectiles. Best way to do this is just to walk around the outer edges of the rotating orbs and then attack with a fully powered up weapon that'll usually reach her no matter what. I have never seen what some of her orb attacks are, just due to this fight structure. Like, I don't think I've ever seen the lightning attack or the sword attack, which is the 4th one she does. The amount of health she takes is completely set from each cycle. This fight's kind of long and tedious due to it. It's a cool fight. I can't think of another fight like this in Castlevania. But it's just kind of tedious. Although now I am curious, because I call this fight relatively set in stone. I'm curious not only what the speedrun time is for this game, but how they get around this fight. I'm gonna go investigate that real quick. Alright, about 10 minutes later, I did some investigation. World record currently at the moment for normal mode is with John, any percent. 29 minutes, 58 seconds. And by the looks, the main strategy with this fight is that Elizaeth will spawn on the opposite side of you, wherever you are. So you bait her out to appear on one side consistently and use the axe sub-weapon to hit her to make the space between her teleports and damage as minimal as possible. So there's no actual way to skip this. This game being around 30 minutes, though, doesn't surprise me too much. Just like Elizaeth, her pattern is very set. She's not a very surprising boss fight, and now she's going to explode. And there was some blood there. That's relatively gruesome, but at the same time, I think the zombie death animation and the wolf deaths animation from the first stage are probably still the most gruesome in the game. And now for the only piece of classic Castlevania music that's in the main game without the password, a Genesis incarnation of Simon's theme from Castlevania 4, which sounds honestly amazing. I actually kind of like it more than the Super Nintendo version. But, of course, being a Castlevania game, Elizaeth wasn't the final boss for a reason. It's time for a good old friend from Romania. Dracula's first phase is fairly standard. He's teleporting all over the place, doing a few different attacks. One, he sends fire at you, depending on where you are. Another one, he'll shoot 2 homing shots directly at you. And another one, he shoots a bit of a fire bar that rotates that you can duck under just by standing next to him. This fight plays out very differently depending on which character you're playing as. As Eric, you can attack him proactively. You don't have to worry about dodging his attacks too much because the spear will take care of the rest for you. If you're playing as John, you want to fight this fight reactively. Wait for his attack and then attack him. Jump over the fire, so on and so forth. Probably one of the easiest Draculas in the series all the same, but yeah. Phase 2, if you have a fully powered up weapon, you don't have to worry too much about just because of the sub-weapons. And this weird little mage form is where I think that Drolta character came from in the manual that I read out last part, because otherwise that character isn't mentioned in the game at all. This thing likes to either try to ram into you, spam some fireballs that'll go along the bottom of the screen and come at you from 2 directions at once, or do a lot of fire bars. The final form of Dracula is weird. We can only hit him in his crotch mouth, as it is. To start off, he has an attack that'll shoot several death sides out, and when they hit the ground, they do an explosion impact, so you need to be careful with your placement there. Towards the latter half of his health, he'll switch his pattern by turning red. In which case, whenever you damage him, he attacks with a fire bar that starts low and you can just kind of duck under a stand hunter. However, I have him in a very good lock with Eric right now. These fights aren't too different as John, you just have to wait for them to come into range. During the last 4th or so of its health, it becomes a skeleton and its main attack becomes spreading bones out, usually in the opposite direction of where it's moving. Very few shots left at this point in the fight, though, so just take your shot, and you should take him out with relatively no problem. Honestly, that's arguably the easiest Dracula fight in the main classic Vania games, because not many of them are that relatively easy. Partially just due to the power-up system, admittedly, and your extra mobility options and aiming options, but still, it's noticeably easy. Thus, Eric has fulfilled his destiny as a vampire hunter. Now, he must venture forth into greater unknowns. The resurrection of Dracula has been averted. However, the blood of the vampire hunters still courses through his veins. Alright, before I get into my little thoughts on the game, I should note that those were the endings from each character's respective expert mode thing. On normal mode, you only get the first screen of those two for each. And on easy mode, you only get 3 seconds of the first screen. You don't even get to see the castle fully crumble. Off screen, what I essentially did was find passwords on GameFAQs to play each character's respective final stage on expert mode just so I can get those endings. Ultimately, on expert mode, it is more or less just a damage cap. There's nothing really too much harder about it beyond that. Resources are still the same, so on and so forth. It's harder, but it's manageable. But yeah, that's Castlevania Bloodlines. I think this game is great. Not as good as Castlevania 1 or 3 in my eyes, but about on par for Castlevania 4. Because while it lacks the control options that game has, it just makes up for it in just generally being kick-ass. Great music, better than Castlevania 4's in my eyes, because I don't like the atmospheric approach for Castlevania as much as the catchier melodies like this one. And dare I say, it's also better looking, because Castlevania 4 had great sprite work, but the colors were generally muted in that game, at least for Simon and the boss fights. This game uses bright colors all over the place to its advantage. It just feels great. Additionally, I also like the option to be able to play as Eric, because at this point in the series, having a secondary playstyle makes sense, because they've realized people might be getting tired of the same formula, control-wise at least. Ultimately, I'd say out of the classic Vanias, this is probably my 4th favorite overall, because Castlevania 1, 3, and especially Rondo of Blood exist. But it's ultimately a solid game. If you want to play it, it's on the Genesis. I think it was on some of the virtual consoles, but since the Wii one shut down, I'm not exactly sure the availability of it now. But you could probably find ways to play it yourself. It's out there. It may even have been on the Genesis Mini. I'm actually not sure about that. Next time we meet up in the Castlevania universe, though, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do. I'm either going to see if I can finally get to Rondo of Blood, or I might just go a completely different direction and do one of the Game Boy Advance Metroidvanias, just because there's very few bad Castlevania games for me to approach, although I could also do some of the Game Boy games. But as for what's immediately next, if I've counted correctly, barring a few little specialties I'll bring up next time, my next Let's Play is my 200th. And I figure it's about time we bring back a series that hasn't been seen in several years on this channel. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great night. Take care. And I'll see you guys when things are looking a little bit redder.